do you do a self-tape without a scene partner?
For me, I mean, obviously, I assume you're talking about a scene where you're interacting with an imaginary person. Obviously, if you're doing a monologue, it's just you talking. So probably best if you're doing a monologue not to talk directly to camera. So you're going to kind of do it off like this, talk to your imaginary person here. And that shouldn't be that hard because you're basically acting off of an imaginary person in front of you. You're reacting to this imaginary person. So if you're dealing with a scene though, and you have another person who has lines, I think it's a good idea to put the other person's lines on tape. So you have the other person's line, and then you react to it, and you just get a little beat between each line so that you can react to the dialogue. That's usually what I would do. I mean, obviously, best case scenario would be, you have a friend or somebody to read with you. But if that's not an option, I think that's a really reasonable option, and I think it can work quite well. Just read the other person's lines, take a beat, read another person's line, take a beat, and then you just kind of have that space to kind of give your line back. Does that make sense?
Perfect. All right, next question. How many times should you practice the breathing exercise when rehearsing a scene?
Usually what I suggest you do is you do the breathing exercise for the scene all the way through it, breathing heavy, one time. So if my emotion is anxiety or whatever, I would take some breaths with anxiety, and then I would breathe in and out, and then say my lines all the way from the beginning all the way to the end of the scene. Now, if you're doing this correctly, you're going to have to stop in between because you're going to get too lightheaded. Especially also, your goal, because every scene has to kind of build and have a beginning, middle, and an ending to it. So you're going to want your breathing to get more and more intense as the scene goes on, kind of giving it that build. And so obviously when you're getting near the end of the scene, where your breathing is going to be the heaviest and the most air in your chest, and you're going to breathe in fast, it's sort of like running a marathon, and you're near the end of the marathon. At the end, you're going to be a lot more lightheaded, and you're going to be going heavy, 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 so you're going to have to stop more often. So you breathe heavy until you get a little lightheaded and you can't continue, you stop. And then you pick it up from where you stop once you're ready to go again, and you kind of make your way through it. So you do that all the way through once. And then you do the same thing again, breathing heavy all the way through, but this time I suggest that you add the objective to the mix. So you'd be breathing heavy, inhale, exhale, say the name of your emotion, and then you would start thinking your objective after every exhale, just in your brain. So I would be, think my objective, and then I say my lines as I'm breathing heavy and thinking my objective. 2 times.
Perfect. And then last question. For somebody who wants to become a new actor, what's the first piece of advice you would give them?
First piece of advice. Let's see. I mean, for me personally, there's a couple of things I would suggest. You got to make sure that you find a technique that works well for you. Obviously, I'm a little biased because I believe in what I'm teaching. I think this technique is a lot healthier than a lot of them out there. A lot of them are sort of compromising one's mental health. You're having to deal with personal experiences, which I don't think is healthy or necessary. So finding a great technique, obviously, is awesome. I would say, secondly, once you find that technique and you're new, one of the biggest mistakes I see is when people come to Hollywood, especially, they're so hungry to get out there and start auditioning. And it's not unusual for a student to come to me and, I meet them and, we have a conversation, and I say to them, well, how's it going for you so far? Do you know how to act? And they say, well, no, not yet, but I have an agent. And so to me, that's kind of like me saying, I'm auditioning for the LA Symphony Orchestra playing the violin, and I don't know how to play yet, but I have a great agent to get me the audition. So think about it that way, that you want to focus exclusively on learning acting. Don't worry about the agent, don't worry about the manager, don't worry about auditioning. And I would suggest that a new actor, you just focus exclusively on learning the craft for at least 6 months, maybe a year. And that way you also kind of take some of the pressure off, because you're going to be around other people who are actors, and they're going to be, hey, I auditioned for this and I booked this, and it's going to feel like competitive, and you're going to feel like, oh God, I got to get out there. But if you don't know what you're doing, and you start auditioning before you're ready, you could burn bridges everywhere. Now, let's just, especially depending on where you are, because if I'm in Hollywood, okay, I burned some bridges, that sucks, but there's a lot of people out here you can audition for. So, people talk, So you probably don't want to burn a lot of bridges, but if you did, it wouldn't be the end of the world, because there's a lot of people out here doing this. On the other hand, if you're in a small city or a smaller town and you start auditioning for stuff before you're ready, and they have, what, 2 casting directors, and you go in there and you blow it, they'll never see you again. So again, just focus exclusively on learning the craft for 6 months to a year, and then when you're ready, then start thinking about auditioning for stuff. And then once you start auditioning for stuff, I suggest you start out auditioning for student films, low budget independent films, maybe a play, little places for you to go and learn, like swimming in the baby pool. And don't start auditioning for, the head of Warner Brothers casting, after only acting for 6 months, unless it can happen. You may, run into somebody who's like, you have the perfect look, and I want you to come audition for my movie, and it's some big studio film. You're gonna have to do it. Obviously you're not gonna say no. So, that's a whole different topic, and it can happen. But again, focus on the craft, focus on learning acting before you start worrying about the business.
Perfect. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.